Hi, this is Melanie Likowski, the author of ELA in Math, Leveled Assessments, and Proficiency Scales. So I wanted to show you the new products that I've just finished and posted on Teachers Pay Teachers. They will be bundled in time for the sale tomorrow. So the newest ELA assessments, I have reading literature done. Reading information's been up for a while, and the newest is the last set of rubrics and kind of mini assessments for writing, speaking and listening, and language, which a lot of those skills you assess in the context of students' performance, which is why the rubrics should work great, and I'll show you those later. First of all, I'm going to show you how the reading and information assessments work. They're sold in separate packets because they're very large documents, but I'll show you all the components. You can download them on teacherspayteachers.com. Look for my store, Mrs. L's Leveled Learning, and see if they'll work for you in your classroom. Most of the people who benefit from these kind of products have to differentiate in their classroom in a specific way. So my products were originally made for the Marzano framework of using proficiency scales. I have scales included with most of them, so you can see this example here. 8th grade reading literature, first and second standard. Every learning goal or standard is broken down into 4 levels of difficulty. This helps you to pre-assess your student's starting place, plan for your instruction, and then post-assess their progress and growth, which is really great. A lot of schools require it. Whether you have to do it or not, you still might benefit from the differentiation embedded in these resources. But let's take a closer look and see what you think. So for reading literature and reading nonfiction information, all the components work the same. You're going to be able to download a table of contents which shows you everything that's included in the preview. All of the stories, so there's fiction and then a separate one for nonfiction. They'll tell you the standards they're aligned to, reading literature or reading information for nonfiction. There's a story pages, and then there's running records for many of the reading passages. I take snippets and I make sure that all the reading passages align to your grade level according to the Lexile indicator. And then you'll see each standard listed under the grade level and the leveled assessment that goes with it. So if you think about a scale being divided into 4 levels of difficulty, the assessment has 4 different pages differentiated to match those levels of difficulty. So a level 3 is always going to be at grade level. Level 2 and 1 are below. Often level 2 includes your vocabulary. Level 1 includes some of your special needs students or students who need special support. And your 4s are your advanced students who you want to challenge. So you will have 4 different levels of assessments for each standard, and there's different ways that you can use these. I'll go over that in a minute, but let's take a look at how they're different. Here's a page for Jack and the Beanstalk, 3rd grade, level 1. It's going to have the easiest questions that pertain to just a basic knowledge of the RL1 standard. I can tell the difference between a question that's related to the text and a question that isn't. Level 2 gets a little harder, and we include a lot of the vocabulary. So there's not a lot of vocabulary in this specific standard, but this is probably where we'd put it. Here, students are asked slightly more open-ended questions where they have to tell where, what, how, and who is involved in the story. In level 3, they are also answering more specific questions from the details in the story to show their comprehension. So you can see how students have more responsibility for developing the questions as opposed to level 2 where they're just kind of introduced to questions and finding answers that relate. Level 4 is for your challenge students. Not all of your students will do level 4, but there's a lot of different ways you could use level 4 for students who either pass level 3 or students who you know are already advanced or gifted. So these are more inferential questions. I can make inferences to answer questions about a text. There's a lot of different ways you can use these 4 levels of assessments. I like to use level 1 as a pretest because it's the simplest, just to gauge if your students mastered some basic concepts related to the standard. Almost all of them will have heard of some of the skills and vocabulary before in previous grade levels, but you just want to do a quick check to see where you're going to start your instruction and if there's any information you can skip over quickly. So I like to use level 1 as the pretest. Level 2, usually it has more of the vocabulary. If that's the case, I always make sure I teach it first, and then maybe a couple days in, give them the level 2 to practice the skills, or to quiz them on the skills. So level 2 could be a quiz for you. It could be homework. It could be a classroom assignment after you've done some of the instruction in terms of the vocabulary and the skill. Level 3 is at the end of the unit, and that's the big grade test, because level 3 will always be the grade level expectation. So you want to give them that once you've done all or most of your instruction. Some of these language arts standards you're going to be teaching over and over throughout the year, but whenever you decide to assess this standard, that's when you'll do the bulk of your instruction or initial instruction, and then the level 3 assessment. And that'll be your big test grade for the standard. And then level 4, sometimes I use that as independent work for my high students, or if I know they're advanced, I might skip level 2 for them, give them level 3 instead, and then they can work on level 4 as their post-test while everyone else is doing level 3, or they'll do it independently while I'm doing other catch-up work with some of the kids who need support. So there's a lot of different ways you can use these. As I said, nobody has time for that many assessments, so I try to be creative, assign them at different times in different ways, maybe do them in small group. You could even walk through level 1 or 2 with your small groups of students during guided reading, go through the passages together, and that will give you more information about your instruction and what you can cover and what you can skip, and maybe reach some of those kiddos who need extra support faster. Also, included in the assessments, there are 4 leveled pages that go with any text. So you'll notice that first assessment went with Jack and the Beanstalk. The second set is general questions that can go with any text. So let's take a look at that. 5th grade, level 1, reading literature, standard 5. I understand that stories have chapters, dramas have scenes, poems have stanzas. I can identify some structural elements. So see if they can identify which elements apply to the specific genre, story, drama, or poem. Choose a drama and write the title here. So they're going to choose something. Circle the elements that apply to this story. Choose a poem and write the title here. So some differentiated questions for the different genres. You can kind of cover everything in a quick snapshot. You will have to choose a few things that are appropriate for them unless you have maybe a group of choices and they can choose their own. You can decide how you want to set this up, but because it's not written for one text, it gives you some flexibility to use the materials that you already have. This is a higher order thinking skill, and it's going to be more challenging for your 5th grade students. You're only going to offer this to students who've already mastered level 3 or you know are capable of mastery. Just for fun, I wanted to share with you some of my favorite stories and examples of the text that you'll get inside these assessments. Most of these assessment texts I had written by some very talented teachers. Writing's not my strongest suit, but I do love teaching it, and it's a lot of fun to kind of break it down and cover all the skills with the kids, but I'm not the most creative writer. So I did have help with these, and I'm happy to share the names of teachers who helped me. I think they deserve all the credit, so I have their names on all the stories, and these are really fun. I made sure that I wanted complete short stories in my assessment so that your students would really find it engaging. And because there are 4 levels of assessments with each story, they're going to be reading it repeatedly, which is great for fluency and it's great for comprehension. And by the time they get to level 3, they should already have had plenty of opportunities to comprehend the story so that you really know you'll be getting the best out of them when you give them the skills assessment. But here's a few fun segments. This story is called The Sweet Plan by Reggie German. This is one of the 4th grade stories. And there's 2 boys who are friends staying up really late talking. One is a great student, one is not. You can find out who's who. Unlike Dalton, Chris didn't have a mom to keep him on track. She passed away before Chris was born. Just after he was born. His dad worked late nights, so it was just Chris and his older sister, Barb. a 15-year-old girl who wanted nothing to do with her obnoxious brother. So Chris spent his nights gaming till his eyes couldn't stay awake. It won't be easy if you can't stay awake, dude. You'll literally be a zombie, said Dalton, giving advice the best way he knew how, with humor. Oh, Chris paused, perused the room for possible intruders. Of course there were none, and cupped the microphone with his hand like he was about to reveal the biggest secret. Don't worry. I have a plan on how I'm going to stay awake for the rest of the test. Let's just say it's going to be sweet. Okie dokie, Loki. You're always up to something, said Dalton. This story's really fun because it has that reference to Loki, which is an allusion to one of the mythological characters that the students will also read about in this story, The Hammer of Thor. And that goes with one of the 4th grade standards. So I really tried hard to choose stories that were going to pull out the skills from each standard so that you really have a chance for students to inference the content. There's a lot of fun vocabulary in it. Most of the vocabulary they can figure out from context clues. Some of them also have like definitions embedded, so you can also check those skills with every single story, just informally. And then the nonfiction reading articles look more like this. A little more fun and interesting, and a lot more of the nonfiction text features that you're going to want to assess in every single story. Titles, subtitles, page numbers, captions, photos, illustrations, diagrams. That one's about Lewis and Clark. This one's called Forces at Work. The author uses basketball to teach about friction, pushes and pulls, and some of the physics concepts students will learn. Stay well. Kids will learn about germs and vaccinations, hand washing. There's, here's some vocabulary at the bottom. That's pretty fun. So the vocabulary in the stories is also going to be in the assessments, usually level 2. Will be focused on vocabulary. There's just so much opportunity for you to pull out the best from children when you have such an integrated resource. Vocab, complete stories, all the elements of nonfiction literature. There's so many places they can look for information and so many ways that you can analyze how they're gaining information. You should have just a really thorough and complete assessment to feel confident in your grading. So I hope you've enjoyed this preview, and a little long, but go ahead and download the free preview, try it out in your classroom and see if it's going to work for you. So thank you so much for your time, and follow me for updates. I would love to hear your comments or questions, so type them in below. Thanks so much.